Certain places just have a knack for creating missing persons mysteries. The reasons vary, but today we're digging into some of the top vanishing hotspots around the country. And I assure you, the stories that we're covering will make you think twice about your next trip. Here are 5 of America's Mysterious Vanishing Zones. Number 5. The Appalachian Trail. The Appalachian Trail is a sprawling and rugged path that stretches over 2,100 miles through 14 states. One of America's most cherished wilderness treasures, and as such, attracts hikers from all walks of life, each seeking a communion with nature or an escape from the chaos of modern living. But beyond its scenic outcrops hides a darker and far more sinister reputation. Because it stretches so far and wide, the stats on how many people vanish from here exactly are murky. But make no mistake about it, this is a place where people disappear without a trace, and murderers have used its solitude to hide their crimes. In the summer of 2013, Jerry Largay, a 66-year-old seasoned hiker, set out on a journey that was meant to be her crowning achievement. A retired nurse with a magnetic personality, she'd always dreamed of conquering the Appalachian Trail, and finally, she was going to turn it into a reality. She had been hiking the trail with a friend, but when her companion had to leave for a family emergency, Jerry, undeterred and highly motivated, continued alone. By July 22nd, she was just a day's hike away from a resupply stop, but she never made it. Somewhere near the Spalding Mountain area in Maine, Jerry disappeared, but what exactly happened, no one knew. For over 2 years, the trail community, local authorities, and even the military searched tirelessly for her, but still no trace of her gear, no hints of her whereabouts were found. And then, in October of 2015, a forester stumbled upon a campsite hidden deep in the woods about 2 miles off the trail. And there, they found the skeletal remains of Jerry. Next to her was a diary detailing her heartbreaking final days. Lost and disoriented, Jerry had set up camp and waited for rescue. For 26 days, she survived on dwindling supplies, all while writing notes to her family and chronicling her despair. Her last entry read simply, "When you find my body, please call my husband George." Tragically, Jerry had been less than 30 minutes away from a logging road that could have saved her life.
A real good feeling to, for the last couple of years, being out here searching, real rugged area to, bring her home for her family.
Not all dangers on the Appalachian Trail come from nature, though, and sometimes the threat is the most dangerous animal of them all. In 1981, 2 friends, Robert Mountford Jr. and Laura Ramsey, were hiking the Appalachian to raise money for a mental health organization. And they were experienced, enthusiastic, and cautious, but their careful planning wasn't enough to protect them from the man they encountered near Petersburg, Virginia. Randall Lee Smith was a local with a history of antisocial behavior. On the trail, he befriended the pair, even sharing a campsite with them. And then, one night, what started as camaraderie turned deadly when Smith decided to shoot and kill both hikers before attempting to hide their bodies. He was eventually caught and sentenced to 30 years in prison, but lucky for him, he only served just 15. After his release in '96, wouldn't you know it, Smith returned to that same area, where in 2008, he attacked 2 fishermen near the trail, leaving them for dead. Luckily, they survived, and Smith, he died in a car crash while fleeing the scene. A few months before that, on New Year's Day of 2008, 24-year-old Meredith Emerson went hiking in Georgia on the trail with her dog Ella, and she never returned. Authorities later discovered that Meredith had crossed paths with Gary Michael Hilton, a drifter and self-proclaimed survivalist who prowled the trail looking for victims. Hilton kidnapped Meredith, holding her captive for days as he forced her to withdraw money from ATMs. Despite her courage and attempts to escape, Hilton eventually decapitated her. When investigators finally apprehended him, they uncovered a chilling pattern of violence. Meredith wasn't his first victim, and Hilton had also been linked to several other murders, including John and Irene Bryant, an elderly couple who disappeared while hiking in North Carolina.
Convicted serial killer Gary Hilton was sentenced in Asheville federal court today for the murders of John and Irene Bryant of Henderson County.
So from tragic disappearances to cold-blooded killers, the Appalachian Trail has been witness to some genuine horrors. Beautiful, yes, but also dangerous. So the question is, are you willing to take the risk? Number 4. California's eerie legacy. For decades, California has attracted dreamers, wanderers, and visionaries, lured by its natural beauty and promises of opportunity. But not all people who go here have good intentions. Because of all this, the state is not only home to some of the wealthiest elites, but it also has some of the highest numbers of missing persons cases in the United States and has served as the hunting ground for an unsettling number of serial killers. Compared to the national average, the Golden State has seen a disproportionately high number of these criminals, and they also seem to be some of the most ruthless. One of them is the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez. Between 1984 and 85, he terrorized Los Angeles and the San Francisco Bay Area, breaking into homes and committing unspeakable acts of violence. His randomness and his choice of victims and sheer brutality shocked the whole nation. In June of '84, his first victim was a 79-year-old woman named Jenny Vinkow. Over the next year and a half, he went on a rampage, racking up at least 15 victims. And not a lot of people know this because it wasn't discovered until 2009 when DNA linked him to the crime. But a few months before Jenny's killing, a 9-year-old girl was found in the basement of an apartment building, having been assaulted and strangled to death. She was discovered hanging by her blouse on a pipe. In this apartment building, well, that's where Ramirez lived.
It is the judgment and sentence of this court that Richard Ramirez shall suffer the death penalty. This penalty is to be inflicted within the walls of the state prison in San Quentin, California.
Prior to the Night Stalker, you of course had the infamous Zodiac Killer, who operated during the late 60s and early 70s. His cryptic messages and taunts to law enforcement made him a media sensation, and he stayed at the forefront of everyone's mind, particularly because he's never been caught. And California is also where the Golden State Killer, Joseph James D'Angelo, operated for decades. Beginning as the Visalia ransacker, he first started by just breaking into people's houses. And weirdly, he didn't take much. He just liked to move things around and rummage through women's underwear drawers. Eventually, though, he graduated to bigger crimes, stalking his victims and waiting for the perfect time to strike. And sometimes he chose couples, and he'd tie them up and make the man lay on the ground before stacking plates on him and explaining, "If I hear these fall, I'll slit her throat." And after that, he'd go have his way with the woman. And at least 13 murders are attributed to him and 50 plus assaults.
It's so warm in Concord tonight that people have their doors and windows open, but the police are saying lock up tight.
So what is it really with California? Because that's not even close to the end of the list. Edmund Kemper, the co-ed killer, used his towering stature and charm to lure victims in the 1970s, brutally murdering college students and even his own mother. He had 10 plus victims. Meanwhile, the freeway killer trio, Patrick Kearney, William Bonin, and Randy Kraft, used California's extensive highway systems as their hunting ground, collectively claiming the lives of dozens of young men during the 70s and 80s. For them, estimates stand somewhere between 16 to 67 victims. The Santa Rosa hitchhiking murders happened between 72 and 73, claiming at least 7 victims. All those women were found dumped off the side of the road. And what really is the reason for all this depravity? Well, there's a couple known factors. California's high number of serial killers and missing persons cases can in part be attributed to its sheer size and diverse geography, which provide endless opportunities for isolation and evasion. The state's highways, deserts, and forests offer places to dispose of evidence or even bodies, complicating investigations. Moreover, its large transient population makes it easy for predators to blend in and target vulnerable individuals, especially among those drawn to the state with hopes of fortune and fame. Dreams and nightmare go hand in hand, so it makes sense that both end up here, creating a stark duality within the Golden State. Number 3. Yellowstone National Park. Yellowstone covers nearly 3,500 square miles and consists of beautiful forest, geysers, and rugged wilderness. It's a place that draws millions of visitors each year and is one of the most mysterious hotspots for unsolved crimes in America. One of its more famous true crime stories happened back in 1966, when 8-year-old Dennis Johnson disappeared during a family outing near Yellowstone Lake. The Johnson family had been enjoying a nice picnic when they noticed that 7-year-old Mary, Dennis's younger sister, hadn't been seen in a while. William, the dad, and Dennis went to look, and they split up at one point to cover more ground. And Dennis had hunted with his dad and knew some general survival skills, so this wasn't out of the ordinary. He understood that if you were ever lost in the woods, that you should head to the nearest stream or river and follow it down because those always lead to civilization. And Mary was found by a stranger who brought her to the nearest ranger station, so she got reunited with her family. But Dennis never returned to the meetup spot him and his dad had laid out. A massive search effort ensued involving park rangers, volunteers, and even the National Guard. The search dogs tracked his scent to a stream, but from there, it vanished. No clothing, no clues, and to this day, Dennis's fate remains a haunting mystery. Beyond his story, interestingly, there's also the unsettling legal gray area known as the Zone of Death. This 50 square mile section of the park lies within Idaho's boundaries, but because Yellowstone's jurisdiction falls under Wyoming's federal district, legal experts argue that a loophole exists. Crimes committed in this area might evade prosecution due to the impossibility of forming a local jury. While no documented murders have exploited this loophole, its mere existence shows that this is a literal land of lawlessness.
That there's a constitutional problem with charging anyone with a felony that were to be committed in this area, and technically you could get away with murder there.
The case of 38-year-old Aaron Hedges, though occurring just outside Yellowstone's boundaries in the Crazy Mountains, further highlights the dangers of these wilderness areas. In 2014, Aaron, who was a seasoned outdoorsman, became separated from his hunting party, disappearing into unfamiliar terrain. Over the following days, search teams found scattered belongings, his backpack, his bow, and even a makeshift shelter. And 2 years later, his remains were discovered miles away in an area that had already been searched. He was identified through dental records, and his cause of death was most likely due to freezing out there. Adding to the park's mystique are, of course, its natural hazards. Yellowstone's geothermal features, while awe-inspiring, are also deadly. In the past 100 years, they've claimed at least 20 lives that we know of. One example of that occurred in 2016, when 23-year-old Colin Scott was hiking through a prohibited area with his sister. Now, they are prohibited for a reason. Tragically, Scott fell into a boiling hot spring and couldn't get out. The intense heat and acidity dissolved his body, leaving no remains to recover whatsoever.
Yesterday, approximately 2:30, I received a call for somebody who slipped and fell into a thermal feature.
And have park officials, have they recovered his body?
No, not at this time.
Okay.
So the next time you venture into any wilderness, remember that nature doesn't care about your good time out there. And sometimes it takes more than it gives. So stay safe and stay prepped. And don't stray too far from the trail, because in a place like Yellowstone, even the most experienced adventurers can vanish without a trace. Number 2. The Silver State. Let's go to Vegas and make a little money. Play some blackjack, visit the sports book. When the sun goes down, we can grab a nice ribeye with our poivre sauce. The allure of all these enticing indulgences is why Vegas stands today and continues to grow at a rapid rate. But don't forget that Vegas itself rises from within the middle of the Mojave Desert, which is an almost endless stretch of land surrounded by various mountain ranges. It's the perfect setting for some strange things to take place. And on top of it all, about 80 miles north of Sin City is Area 51, ground zero for the government's shady and potentially otherworldly dealings. Stir all this into a pot, and you can see why Nevada has so many unsolved mysteries and true crime tales to tell. Stephen Kocher's case from 2009 is one that comes to the top of the list. On December 13th that year, the 30-year-old with no known enemies and a clean record was last seen on home surveillance footage, walking through a suburban neighborhood in Henderson. He had parked his car at the end of a cul-de-sac and walked away. He returned a short time later, retrieved an unknown object from the car, and then walked off again. His vehicle was eventually searched, and it contained Christmas presents, a bottle of water, and a blanket. But Stephen himself was never seen again. As the investigation unfolded, strange details then emerged. Phone records placed Stephen's calls in a seemingly random pattern across the state in the days leading up to his disappearance. Was he running from somebody, perhaps? Or maybe the opposite. Was he meeting with somebody? Despite extensive searches of the desert and the neighborhood surrounding his last known location, well, it's been 15 years, and no trace of Stephen has ever been found.
Do you think your brother's alive?
So if he's alive and he knows who he is, I have a hard time imagining he would just be gone and stay away from our family. I honestly don't think he's alive anymore.
And then there's the case of Kenny Veach, a seasoned hiker and YouTuber who disappeared in 2014 after embarking on a solo trip in the Sheep Mountains north of Las Vegas. Now, Veach had gained a decent following online after posting about a strange M-shaped cave he stumbled upon in the Nevada desert, which he claimed gave him an overwhelming feeling of dread and gave off a fierce vibration. It also just so happened that the M cave was very close to Area 51. So then, the ideas came in from his community members about it possibly being an entrance to the site, or even a portal to some other world. They wanted him to show them the cave, and so he set out, determined to document the whole thing, but he never returned. Despite search efforts, no trace of Veach or his equipment has ever been discovered. Some speculate that he succumbed to the unforgiving terrain, while others believe the cave may hold the key to his disappearance.
Well, I did not find the cave. That is so weird. I thought for sure I was just gonna be able to find it. I remember it being fairly easy.
Lake Mead is a massive reservoir, just a short drive from Las Vegas, and it has its own sordid history of vanishing swimmers, missing boaters, and most recently, human remains surfacing as the lake's water levels drop. The skeletal remains of one individual, found stuffed in a barrel in 2022, suggest a mob-style execution dating back decades. And all that sat in everybody's Vegas drinking water and what they showered in. And Thomas Erndt was exposed in May of 2022. He drowned there back in 2002. And 2 months later, Claude Penzinger was revealed, and 2 months after that, Donald Smith, both of whom had drowned there as well. The reasons behind Nevada's high number of missing persons are varied. Its proximity to tourists and travelers, gambling hubs, and underground economies adds layers of weirdness. The Silver State's allure lies in its contradictions. A place where riches are made and lost is the same place that a vibrant life can come to a dark end. Number 1. The Grand Canyon. For centuries, the Grand Canyon has drawn explorers, adventurers, and tourists, all looking to get a glimpse and get inspired. It is, after all, one of the 7 natural wonders of the world, so it's worth seeking out. But be warned, because many who come here, well, they never come back. In fact, since 2018, over 1,100 people have vanished from here, leaving behind a whole lot of unanswered questions and mysteries that run as deep as the canyon itself. One of the earliest and most enduring mysteries from here involves a young couple named Glenn and Bessie Hyde. Newlyweds on an ambitious honeymoon, they set out in October of 1928 to traverse the Colorado River by scow, a feat that, if completed, would have made Bessie the first woman to achieve such a daring expedition. The couple was seen on November 18th when they stopped to resupply with a local photographer who captured their smiling faces, and that was the last image of them ever recorded. Weeks turned into months, and when the Hydes failed to return, a massive search ensued. Their scow was eventually found adrift, fully intact with all their supplies untouched. There was no sign of Glenn or Bessie. So what happened? Over the years, rumors circulated. A woman, claiming to be Bessie, confessed decades later that she had killed Glenn and escaped, but no evidence ever surfaced to prove her story, and their disappearance remains one of the canyon's most haunting mysteries. I fast forward to the summer of 2016 when Floyd Roberts, an experienced hiker, embarked on a backpacking trip with 2 friends through the rugged terrain of the Grand Canyon Snake Gulch. During a descent into the canyon, Roberts fell behind his companions just a little bit, something that happens from time to time but shouldn't be a big deal. And he'd catch up while they waited, but he never came, and so they doubled back to get him, but Floyd was gone. The search and rescue effort for Roberts was one of the largest in the park's history, involving helicopters, ground teams, and thermal imaging.
The area where Roberts went missing is rugged and covered in thick brush, and it takes several hours for rangers to get in and out.
What makes this case particularly strange is that these guys were in a remote area. In other words, no one else was around. And you would think there would be some sign of him being there over the course of several days, no matter what had happened, and yet there was absolutely nothing. And some theorized that Roberts succumbed to the harsh condition, and his remains were hidden somehow by the unforgiving terrain, but others believe he could have encountered someone, or really something, that led to the whole mysterious disappearance. Not all Grand Canyon mysteries are about disappearances, though. In 2007, Thomas Langston, a tourist from Oregon, was found dead along one of the lesser traveled trails. His body showed clear signs of foul play. He had been stabbed multiple times. His personal belongings were scattered nearby. The isolated location of his murder made it easy for the killer to get away. And despite the high-profile nature of the case, leads dried up quickly. The murderer was never identified, and Langston's case remains open. Grand Canyon's dark history doesn't end with these cases. Many of the over 1,100 missing persons reported since 2018 are hikers who underestimated the brutal conditions of the desert, the labyrinth of trails, and the park's sheer size. Some disappear due to accidents or dehydration. Others are thought to have gone out there with no intention of coming back. But every so often, there's a case that defies explanation. A hiker's gear found neatly folded near a cliff, a car abandoned at a trailhead with no signs of its owner, a cryptic note left behind that offers no real clues. What is it about this iconic location that seems to draw people in, only to swallow them whole? Or perhaps it's the canyon's sheer isolation, or its almost supernatural aura. Whatever the reason, one thing's clear. The Grand Canyon holds its secrets close. For those who enter its depths, there's always the risk of becoming part of its legacy. So there were 5 of America's Mysterious Vanishing Zones. Thanks for tuning in. If you want more content like this, remember to subscribe and hit the bell so you know when we're putting out our new content. We got new episodes coming out each and every week. Thanks so much for stopping by. Stay safe out there. I'll see you guys soon.